Oh yeah, dead birds. I wanted to talk about. No, sometimes people find freshly dead birds, or they hear a chase, and they only see the end result, right? So clearly that bird was alive about 5 minutes before you got there. eBird doesn't really have an official. Cornell doesn't really have a clear policy on that. So
I mean, their policy is it's supposed to be for living birds.
yeah, but they haven't totally discouraged that.
But they know there are a lot of great records out there of recently dead birds.
Right. So specimens that people collected, recently dead birds. It happens, right? So I think be very judicious in your use of putting dead birds in eBird.
Yes, but there is only one way to enter dead birds in eBird, and that is an incidental checklist with no effort,
right,
and just that bird.
Right, because
keep in mind, technically these birds are not countable by ABA rules, but it will count on your list in eBird, so you put it in there. So
yeah.
Can you enter it as a 0 and species number?
Oh, you can enter zeros, and that's actually, it's caused problems when people report a species and realize they've misidentified it or just simply messed up. Some people change it to a 0, and it technically eliminates it from the data, but it's still there in your checklist, so it's kind of...
Yeah, it's kind of weird.
So don't use zeros. Yeah, do not use zeros. It's kind of like screwing the system a bit, right? It doesn't really work when you put a 0. You can put a 0, but it doesn't really know how to output it, right?
So there's no way to flag the absence of something reasonably expected?
Well, it is. Everything's flagged.
Actually be interesting.
Well, that's the thing. Every checklist, half the time you're looking at what wasn't reported, right? So you always every analysis, like every analysis done is looking at presence absence. So it's not only just looking at what was reported, but it was looking at what wasn't reported on a 2-kilometer hike in Acadian forest in Nova Scotia, right? Or what's left of the Acadian forest.
If you do realize a change that you need to make in a species, say you got home and you were looking at your photos and you thought they were all common golden eyes and you had a Burroughs in there.
Right.
How would you said not to put a 0 in.
Yeah, so edit species list.
Yep.
You just simply change the number. So I'll change one on this at a common bird just for this.
But yeah, just don't change anything to 0, just delete it.
Just leave it
Delete
empty.
it.
Just delete it.
So
Perfect.
let's say I actually saw 8 dark-eyed juncos. Boom. Change it. Let's say I didn't see a hermit thrush. And that's it. And you can hit save. In this case I won't. I won't put those back in. Right. So save. Now it's got the photo embedded into it. Right? So that's and there was one thing. So then the app.
Oh yeah. So now there's a free app. I'm sure some of you have it for smartphones, on the iPhones and on Android. It's just called the eBird app. It just recently replaced bird log, which had been out for several years beforehand. And it's another way to enter eBird data while you're still actually in the field. I use it all the time. I find it really handy. Just start a checklist as soon as you get to a location. I mean, you can pick the hotspots off the map or create personal locations, and then you can just enter the birds straight off the app. It's free. I like it. I'm kind of a little bit torn about it. I use it all the time. I do kind of miss my field notebook, but it does save a lot of time when you get back from the field. You don't have to enter all your lists, go through everything. I also find it gives me more accurate counts while I'm in the field. I can continuously updating the counts of each species as I see them. And it's also really useful in circumstances where you just go to a park and you start the checklist. You might not really see anything good, but you still have a few species, and then that data is still in there. So otherwise, that data may have been lost. So I can really give you that.
And it's also February's eBird Challenge.
That's right.
So you can win a pair of Zeiss Conquest binoculars if you enter 15.
Well, obviously, you're eBirding in areas where you have cellular connections. So why do you don't have cellular?
Not necessarily.
Yeah, well, it has a list overall. I mean,
Yeah.
if your GPS on your phone is working, it'll record the location with the GPS. It'll just like down. It has a basic list of birds already. I don't know if it might do the whole global taxonomy.
So here, I do it all the time.
Yeah.
There's an option to create offline checklists, and to get over that, you can upload a checklist for the region prior when you have cell coverage. If not, it'll just give you the full taxonomy of the whole world, and you just enter the name.
But you can type in what you want.
You type in what you want,
or
right?
by the banding code, so you just type in the birds you need, so you don't scroll through the whole list.
And that just is an unknown checklist with unknown location, and when you find the coverage, you just select, you can hit review and submit, and it'll say, this was checklist was created offline, please indicate where you were birding. You go to the map, you zoom into your location, and then it'll load the correct filter for that area. Right, so yeah, I mean, I don't have that much data on my phone. In fact, sometimes I didn't have it forever, like at all. So I do a lot of offline checklists and just wait until I get internet access again. Right.
I noticed a lot of Android checklists have a distance of 0.621 miles.
Yes, eBird, Android was causing problems with the programming, and I enter everything in kilometers, and it turns it into miles. And that's just the problem with the system. Apple doesn't do that, but he said they're trying to work on that, but apparently it was much harder than it would seem to fix that. Because yes, that's been brought up many times. Yeah, I mean, we use kilometers. It's only the states that's using miles.
So with the eBird app, you are putting the location in manually. It's not just.
Well, your GPS will find.
But you still have to give it a name, right?
Okay.
Yeah, it'll still
But
give you a map.
It's taking your location from.
If you have your GPS, you don't need to have it turned on. I don't have mine turned on.
Yeah, okay.
I just get a map of the world and I just zoom in, right?
Right on.
So let's jump ahead here to so that's like kind of how you enter observations. But then where is all this going? So this is the cool stuff. So there are many options to explore data. So we'll start with the species maps. This is basically if you're wanting to look at bird records, start with these three: species maps and bar charts, right? So species map, if we click on it, here's what we have. We have a map of the world, and we have and every dark square is where people have submitted a checklist. So there's clearly large swaths of Siberia that no one's ever eBirded, areas of inland green, and that's fine. And you always have to keep that into consideration, right? These records aren't fully representative of what is actually there. So here's how you do it. So you enter a thing. So what we're going to do, we're going to do Merlin, right? So let's do Merlin, year-round falco, right? And then let's say I'm interested in Nova Scotia. I just zoom in. Okay? And it's always key to click this thing on the side here. Show points sooner. Always click that. And there. So every dot is where someone's entered a record of Merlin in Nova Scotia all time. I can change the filter, conditions here. I can say year-round, or I can say, just give me the last 10 years, just this year, whatever months. So it's very simple. But here's
How far back does this go?
As far back as people have entered data. So.
No,
Yeah.
how far was that?
There's records from the 1800s, like
Okay.
1860s, 1870s. There's a few single species records.
Yeah, some specimens. There are specimens exist from the early 1800s that people have entered that are clearly
I wasn't thinking retroactively.
you're trusting that the specimens were.
The 1800s, so
You're trusting that the information on the specimen tag, but obviously you can verify the species at least. And known collectors, it's it's straightforward. You're still putting trust in things, but that's the way birding is, right? So what I wanted to demonstrate with this, what do you notice? The first thing that strikes you on this map here.
Yeah.
Exactly. All the records are from where people are, coastal. Of course, there are Merlins in inland Nova Scotia, right? And you think that the whole shore here is not populated with Merlins? Of course not, right? That's just a reflection of observer bias, right? Where the populated centers are. So Halifax, Lunenburg, Bridgewater area, Wolfville, Cape Sable Island, Yarmouth, Briar Island, right? Pictou and Truro. So it's important to reflect that, and so that's what, by taking observations associated with habitat layers, then you can extrapolate, where a species is likely to occur. But you always have to be careful. And so when you're looking at these maps, all these big ones here, these are hotspots that people have seen them. So what's this red one here? Let's see this most recent one. Oh, it's Pleasant Hill Cemetery. So you can see who's entered Merlin. So I was actually the last person to enter one on the 15th. So obviously each observation that's pooled into that spot. And so what's the red versus the blue? Red just means a recent observation, right? So this is a personal location. Let's see who that is. Someone's house, 7 Northview Drive, Ruby Lawrence. They have a photo. And you can see there's a photo. So let's see if it's correctly identified. So, no, it's not. And I had a kind of suspicion that it might not be. So, a Merlin.
Is Ruby here tonight?
Is Ruby here tonight? We don't want to embarrass Ruby. I actually had no idea, but here's the thing with this, is that there's always going to be issues with data quality, and no one's going to ever review a bunch of Merlins because they're expected, and you can never expect someone to look through every Merlin record and say, yes, this is a Merlin record. Reporting incorrectly one Merlin is not going to, bias the data too much because they're regularly occurring, and the amount of effort that comes with Merlin observations is still like one observation is not going to skew this. So here's a perfect example. I can flag this record. You can flag this record. Anyone can flag this record. If you see a photo that's misidentified, you hit this report button here, and that will get it sent to probably us. And we will look at it. So you have the option always to report incorrectly identified species.
Nice. In the case of recently the Pleasant Hill Cemetery, you might get 1 or 2 reports per week.
Yeah.
If you're lucky, and then all of a sudden the red wing appears, and you get 500.
Yeah.
How do you split that data?
So that's still very good, but there is an overrepresentation of rare birds. So, of course, all those checklists of that one area actually makes for great data, except for if everyone's seeing the red wing, it'll up the frequency of the red wing versus common species. But that's well known, and in fact, Jake will talk about that later. Yeah. What's up? Yeah.
I see another error in this page.
Nocturnal.
Yes.
Right. So.
It's one that I make every now and then.
Yeah. So these are data errors, but you'll notice here. What's this in the corner? This is the Great Backyard Bird Count, and in fact, that's known to have data problem entries. So eBird actually doesn't if you download the data, you won't get this checklist because they recognize that they can't guarantee the quality of the Great Backyard Bird Count data submitted through the Great Backyard Bird Count data portal. And that's not to say it's not a good initiative. It's a great initiative, right? It's just that it's primarily beginner users that are likely to make errors, And it really is not anything to be ashamed about or trying to put anyone down. It's simply the fact that, like you see, there's the probability of making an error is much greater than not. If you are doing the Great Backyard Bird Count and you already have an eBird account, go through the eBird portal, not the Great Backyard Bird Count. Let's get out of here. Now, there's ways to look for those types of errors, but it's usually easy to pick up if you entered the wrong date. Say you want to put May 5th and you put or May 1st and you put January 1st, right? You flip the month and the day. That's easy because it will trip the filter and we'll look at the record. It's also easy if you plot your point out in the ocean. Okay, so what is this point out here? This is probably, let's see, Chapel Arm, North Sydney Ferry. Okay, falcons are well known to go out to the ocean and hang on boats. So just because it's a pelagic record doesn't mean it's bogus. Let's see these ones here. Right, Maine to Nova Scotia, that would have been on the ferry. So you can see there are issues, but overall, the amount of observations out, every analysis you're doing, you always have some sort of error associated with your data, right? And those errors are so minimal, and that when you're undertaking a study on Merlins, for instance, those things can get filtered out, and they do, right? And even if you have an error like that of that magnitude, it's not going to affect your overall, habitat association. You only have 1 point from the ocean, and you have 1,000 points from a coastal zone. So, yeah. So is there anything else we wanted to go? Yeah. So what's another?
That's it for the maps.
Yeah, I was just underreporting. So, Cumberland County, in particular, Nova Scotia, Guysborough County, they lack a lot of records.
So records from the Breeding Bird Atlas, Breeding Bird survey routes. None of them are entered on there, but would give you better representation from areas that aren't birded regularly.
Absolutely, and so
are those things going to be
here.
entered on?
I will actually.
I wouldn't mind having my podcast put on.
eBird's not going to do it for you. I mean, you can do it all yourself, but I'll say there's this other thing called the Avian Knowledge Network, which eBird is a part of. It's an even larger database. So all eBird data goes in there, the backyard bird count, and breeding bird survey routes, and breeding bird atlas data, and just pretty much any bird data there is, like international shorebird surveys, they all get dumped to this avian knowledge network. And you can download the data straight from there if you want. You can have it all from every data source. But yeah, in eBird, you would have to put them in yourself.
So
routes.
this kind of looks like a root. I don't know. Let's see, is this you, Ken? Yeah, this is you. Right. So, was that a breeding bird survey route?
That's an owl route.
An owl route. Okay. So.
No, it's just birding the main road from
Okay.
Caledonia to Sherbrooke. Yeah.
You essentially have to put them in, and some of them are hard. And I'll be the first to admit I have lots of checklists that I haven't entered. In fact, mainly like all of my Ecuador checklists and Guyana checklists are not even in there. So it does take a lot of time, and you know some people are amazing and some people are not, and it's just who cares, right? But if you really want to go have at it, and definitely the breeding bird survey routes are great. Now there is questions if a lot of times they're spaced out. They're like long travel counts, like 50 kilometers. And right now, there's been a lot of discussion in the eBird review group about how to deal with that. But essentially, it's better to have them in there and deal with that later. Someone that's doing a data analysis can just filter out any checklist longer than 20 kilometers and have at it, right? So I encourage those, as long as the effort was there and it was a true birding, true birding effort, then absolutely put it in, even if it's 50 kilometers.
I don't understand why a person would have to individually enter that when the data is already there. It's associated with a certain point count.
Yes.
There is a GPS associated
Yeah.
with it. And all those birds that are here in that particular point count are going to be associated with that number. Why would you have to re-enter that?
Right. So it may be that there could be an association with Cornell with wherever you enter those records, but it's simply that there's not an association, and someone else has not taken on to enter that data.
Yeah, well, they're meeting about that. I think
They are,
just
yeah,
this
they are.
week they're going to meet with the breeding bird survey coordinators, the people from eBird, and they're going to talk about it in some way that's mutually beneficial for everyone. Like eBird it's a very small staff. I mean, there's probably 7 people on staff at eBird. I mean, it's really small. So I mean, they don't want to put the effort into it right now. It's just kind of redundant information because it's also you can get it through the breeding bird survey. It's also in the avian knowledge network, so you can download it that way if you want to. It might actually not be too hard to download the data from the avian knowledge network and then upload it yourself into eBird. I think that would probably be pretty easy, but never tries.
It is there for trend analysis and everything anyway, isn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
DBS.
Yeah.
It's like,
And eBird itself is not very good for trend analysis, mainly because of the non-randomness of observations and the sampling effort and how it's changed. So, but we're going to actually look at that actually later. So we would